Okay, so here we are right now. We are going to start our English session. Apologies for the slight delay we had. Well, our next talk is going to be delivered by Mary MacLeod. Unfortunately, she could not be with us here today, but she left her speech recorded. So let me tell you a little bit about her before we start. Mary MacLeod Coat is a conference interpreter in France. She came to the profession via the long road after studying and teaching at tertiary level. She returned to her initial passion, words. Aged 53, she's originally from Scotland with a Gaelic speaking father and Italian speaking mother, so English was their relay. A linguist, she's a traveler, and a rampant Burns fan. She's been working in France since 2007, loves reading, swimming, and dogs. So I will share her presentation and you can start interpreting. Just give me 1 second so that I'm able to share it with you. I'm not sure about the volume, so be ready to crank up your volume if necessary.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I've been asked to showcase something fairly special today, and that is Burns Night. Now, Burns Night is known, particularly here in Scotland, as being our other national holiday, although obviously it's an unofficial one. On the 25th of January, homes, businesses, and particularly schools across this land celebrate the birth of one Robert Burns, born in Ayrshire in the south of Scotland in January 1759. And to be sure, it's not only in Scotland that people will hail the bard. The Burns Society is a worldwide phenomenon celebrating Scots poetry, culture, and really so much more all over the planet. So the question remains, why? Why Burns? There have been many exceptional writers and poets from this corner of the world. J.M. Barrie, David Livingstone, Adam Smith, Arthur Conan Doyle, Robert Louis Stevenson, David Livingstone. I mean, who doesn't love a bit of Treasure Island or Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde? And we can go back as far as the 5th century, to be honest, to Ossian and the cave poets. So why this young lad from a farm in the austere south of the country? How has he gained such national and international fame? I think to answer the question properly, you have to firstly have an understanding of the people of this wee nation, a barren outpost on the periphery of Europe. Scotland is a nation of many tribes, built on the foundations of Pictish and Celtic tradition, flavored with a tad of Viking and some Scots, and emboldened by struggle with the invader, be he Roman or otherwise. The history of the country is complicated, but perhaps on this occasion it is enough to understand the following. It is only recently, in the last 2 centuries, shall we say, that Scotland has really been a united country in modern terms. Before this, the system was feudal, tribal, clannish. You had the Scots in the south of the country, speaking Scots, like Mr. Burns. The people of Doric in the east. Actually, it's still totally incomprehensible to most Scots today when they speak. The Viking remnants in the north, and the Gaels in the west and in the islands, where Gaelic is still the first language of many today. So quite the selection in such a small nation, when you consider that there are still less than 5 million people here today, and thus problematic to govern. Until the 18th century, the clan system was dominant in the West Highlands, always resistant to the foreign government of Edinburgh, and where a white cockade can still be seen worn by many. But that is a story for another day. These people were eventually subdued into a fragile peace, an uncomfortable union where many fractures were still apparent. But there are elements which unite us. We are a nation of optimists. Who else would put up with 200 days of rain per year? We're a nation of storytellers, of dreamers, and of journeymen. Scotland's greatest export to this day is still its people. We love a céilí, the Gaelic word for a coming together, for a party, for the crack, just for the sake of it. And in a time where internet has become so prevalent and predominant, and much of life now takes place online, thank you, COVID, where people have retreated into themselves, local halls have been replaced by warm firesides, where stories can be told to and by young and old, traditional yarns embroidered with ever more fancy, and where the flow of uisce, the water of life, whiskey, is abundant. This is not myth, this is reality. Burns was weaned on such reality, on tales of the supernatural told to him by his old nursemaid. We don't take ourselves too seriously. While other countries might have eagles and cockerels as their national emblems, Scotland has the unicorn. We are all firm believers in the Loch Ness Monster, first sighted by St. Columba in the 5th century, and we all enjoy participating in the yearly haggis hunt. Haggis hunt, I hear you say? Oh yes, indeed. Another one of our unique specimens, a small 3-legged beastie that runs around the mountains, the third leg being slightly shorter for leverage and speed, helping these creatures outwit the hunter, in most cases anyway. This, incidentally, is what is traditionally eaten at a Burns supper, with due respect paid to the animal as a piper plays the dish to the table before the Selkirk grace is recited by the host of the supper. So who was this man? Who was Robert Burns? Robert, or Rabbie, although it's only a nickname, was born in 1759 on the 25th of January, the eldest of 7 children of a tenant farmer. He continued his father's profession for much of his life, though towards the end, he worked as an excise supervisor, ensuring tax was collected. He is remembered, though, for the 700 or so poems that he wrote before he died at age only 37. His funeral coincided with the birth of his youngest son, Maxwell. Dying in debt, Burns' poverty never left him, but his sense of the world being an unequal place and his position among the poor and deprived meant his work resonated keenly with everyday Scots. A forerunner of the Romantic movement, Robert Burns, as a pre-Romantic poet, had a significant influence on later Romantic poets such as Wordsworth and Coleridge. He wrote frequently, prolifically, and usually with a great passion. Most often he wrote songs and poems of love, lust, drink, the poor and rich and the gulf between them, religion, and of Scottish identity. The sharp sense of his Scottishness was reassured by his frequent use of Scots dialect in his work. It helped him become regarded as the national poet of Scotland, the reputation which, of course, is still held today. Robert Burns, also known as Rabbie, the national bard, the Bard of Ayrshire, and the ploughman poet. Let me read you a couple of examples of his poetry, though I sincerely hope you don't have to interpret them. Frequently sung, I will spare you my dulcet tones and just recite. So here we have A Red, Red Rose, written in 1794. Oh, my love's like a red, red rose that's newly sprung in June. Oh, my life's like a melody that's sweetly played in tune. As fair art thou, my bonny lass, so deep in love am I, and I will love thee still, my dear, till a' the seas gang dry. Till a' the seas gang dry, my dear, and the rocks melt wi' the sun, and I will love thee still, my dear, while the sands o' life shall run. And fare thee weel, my only love, and fare thee weel a while, and I will come again, my love, though 'twere 10,000 mile. So I think in that one, you get a sense of the Scottishness and the Scots without it being completely incomprehensible, but we'll get there. Another one, fairly well known, if you will permit me, a fond kiss. A fond kiss, and then we sever. Aye, farewell, alas, forever. Deep in heart-wrung tears I'll pledge thee, warring sighs and groans I'll wage thee. Who shall say that fortune grieves him while the star o' hope she leaves him? Me nae cheerful twinkle lights me, dark despair around benights me. Oh, it's terrible, I know, I'm sorry for doing this. So as you can see, it's fairly different from the standard received English we all like to practice today. Now, besides his poetry, Burns is remembered as a keen drinker. His death from rheumatism is sometimes said to have been compounded by this heavy drinking, though this is contested, and as a serial kirk-shirking philanderer. Though married to Jean Armour, with whom he had 9 children, he's said to have had at least 12, though unfortunately it would seem that only 5 actually survived. So what then is a Burns supper? Well, the format is simple. Poems are read, a traditional 3-course supper is served, whiskey is drunk. In short, eat, drink, and be merry. The evening tends to begin with the host welcoming guests and reading the Selkirk Grace, a brief prayer expressing thanks for the food. Though sometimes regarded as a poem of Burns, in fact, it has been around since the 17th century, when it was known as the Covenanters' Grace, or the Galloway Grace. The Selkirk name is thought to have arisen after Burns performed the prayer for the Earl of Selkirk in 1794. He then performed it so often that people began to assume he wrote it. So after the grace, a first course is served. Traditionally, you have cullen skink, a soup made of smoked haddock, onions, and potatoes. Then comes the main course of haggis. Sometimes the haggis arrives accompanied by pipes, and usually before eating, Burns' address to the haggis is read. The crowd will toast the haggis and tuck into the savoury pudding, made, okay, not of a 3-legged animal, but of sheep's heart, liver and lungs, all mixed in with suet, onions, oatmeal, and heavily spiced. Let me give you a taste of this one. Fair fire on a sunsy face, great chieftain of the pudding race. Aboon them a' ye tak your place, punch tripe o' therm, weel are ye wordy no grace as lang's my arm. The groaning trencher there you fill, you heard is like a distant hill, your pin was helped to mend a mill in time of need, while through your pores the dews distill like amber bead. And I'll just finish it with the proper ending because it's far too funny not to. Ye powers wha mak mankind your care and dish them out their bill o' fare. Old Scotland wants nae skinking ware that jopes and luggies. But if ye wish her grateful prayer, gie her a haggis. Basically, no one understands it, but we all recite it. Pudding may now be served, or now or before the immortal memory. So you can choose from 2 puddings. You can have cranachan, which is most commonly served as a whiskey trifle, or a clootie dumpling, a steamed pudding similar to Christmas pudding, though with more ginger, cinnamon, and treacle. And afterwards, a tribute to Burns is given through the immortal memory. There is no set text for this. Each host or speaker writes their own. Its purpose is to fill in the diners, on the life and works of the poet, and it should aim to be funny, capturing the rowdy spirit of Mr. Burns himself. The only real rule is that it should end with a toast to the immortal memory of the bard himself. And then comes, in a nod to Burns' fondness for women, the toast to the lassies. Again, there is no set speech, and the speaker will usually thank the host, talk through Burns' lively love life, and usually pay tribute to the women in the room. It may include extracts from Burns' many love poems, and this is typically followed by the retort, the reply to the toast of the lassies. Here, a female speaker offers a light-hearted, teasing retort to the men. Burns wrote often of what he perceived as male weakness: drink, debauchery, and lust. Things conclude with a toast to the host, known as the vote of thanks, after which Auld Lang Syne is sung. And it can be taken that whiskey is drunk prolifically throughout most of this. So we all know the familiar tunes of My Love is Like a Red, Red Rose, A Fond Kiss, and the immortal strains of the Tam O'Shanter, and A Man's a Man for All That. And who amongst us has not sung on an international stage Auld Lang Syne? Should old acquaintance be forgot and ne'er brocht to mind? Should old acquaintance be forgot and Auld Lang Syne? For Auld Lang Syne, my dear, for Auld Lang Syne. We'll tak a cup of kindness yet for Auld Lang Syne. We twa he peddled in the burn from morning sun till dine, but seas beyond us braid he roared sin Auld Lang Syne. And here's a hand, my trusty fair, and gie's a hand o' thine, and we'll tak a right good willy wacht for Auld Lang Syne. Love him or hate him, his work stays with you. And this is perhaps his greatest tribute. He has united a nation and poetry and song, in kinship and in joy, more effectively and in a more enduring fashion than any minister, chief, lord, or king.
Wow. Well, I hope you liked it. I'm sure that many of you are already thinking about the drink that you deserve and that you will pick to be drunk afterwards.